Well, greetings everyone, and welcome once again to another Wednesday night right here at the Sports Crib. As you can see, all of our commercial stuff is down here on the bottom of Sports Crib, home of the Sports Crib Network. You can subscribe and donate right here on YouTube at $ JEKing3. All proceeds go to help us put programs on the air and for prizes in our fantasy leagues. So, with that being said, we have a very special guest tonight, Mr. Jack Moore. We'll be talking something that we don't talk a lot about here on the Sports Grid, but hey, it's that season is coming up, so we'll be talking a little baseball here with Mr. Moore. Mr. Moore, how are you doing this evening? Let's get you up here on the stage first.
Okay. I'm doing very well, sir, and I'm honored to be on here with you, and I appreciate the invite.
No problem. And, of course, we have Dave is here. We're going to talk a little baseball. And look, here's the blessing room to be.
There's
Mr. Don Hayes, he's been all over Texas. I've been watching from Fort Worth. Don, where all have you been this week?
Oh God! So start off, I took my my fiance's son back to school up at Lubbock in Texas Tech, and then we went through the Panhandle, ended up in Fort Worth, Weatherford, visited my sister in Dallas, and then came back.
Yeah, I saw you. Look like you were enjoying yourself there, Don.
Oh yeah, it was fun.
Yeah. So tonight we're going to talk a little baseball here with Mr. Moore. Mr. Moore, before we get started, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? We can't hear you. Mr. Moore, can you hear us?
I don't think he can hear us.
We can't hear you.
See if he's on mute.
No, he's not on mute. Maybe on his side. Mr. Moore, can you hear us? We can't hear you. Yeah, we can't hear you.
Yeah, we can hear each other, but we can't hear you.
He was there just a minute ago. What happened? Still not quite understanding what's going on there. Maybe he's definitely not on mute.
No, for some reason he can't hear us.
We can't hear you. We can't hear you. No. He was on when we first started. Let's see, maybe if we take him off and bring him back on, see if that'll do. I don't see, though. Can you hear us now?
Yeah, he just went on mute. Now he took it off mute.
Yeah, I was trying to see if it was us.
Oh.
It was working fine a minute ago.
Maybe use the chat feature.
Let's see. Yeah, let's see if.
Oh no, he said no. He's on there.
Oh, okay, I see. Yeah.
Try saying something.
Hello? Yeah.
Hold on. So I just asked him to try saying something. Oh yeah, can't hear you. No. Maybe he should try logging out and logging back in, or leaving the studio and coming back
Yeah,
on.
yeah, try that. Let's put that in the chat. Maybe if he comes back. Uh,
Yeah, he says he's not hearing anything. So I told him to try leaving studio and coming back on. Okay, he's gonna log back on. We'll see if that works.
yeah. So Don, how's your baseball predictions for this year? Astros, Rangers.
Well, I think the Rangers going to be a little bit better than we were last year. I think the Astros will probably be about the same. Um, they'll definitely be competitive. I mean, they're ever since the Rangers made that jump to the National League, they've been very competitive. So I'm hoping that they make some moves to their pitching staff to bolster their bullpen, and if they do that, I think they'll be fine.
Mr. Moore, can you hear us now?
I do hear you now, sir. Yes, sir.
All right.
Gotcha.
Okay. All right. Very good. Very good. So we're going to talk a little baseball tonight, as I said. So give us a little bit of your background there, Mr. Moore. I know you carry many hats.
I grew up in Virginia. I went to Chowan Junior College where I played baseball. Then I went to Gardner Webb, which is now Gardner Webb University in North Carolina. Played college baseball, got out, started coaching college baseball. Got a master's degree in history, wrote my master's thesis on the Kennedy assassination. So if you guys want to talk about the big file dump, of course, that's all the rage now on the internet. And went to law school, practiced law, did some player representation, which is the worst business on earth. And I've just done a lot of coaching. I'm still coaching college baseball now, working with college players.
Oh, okay. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how baseball has, I guess, evolved. I guess might be the term. But I want to start a little bit about the history of baseball. Can you provide kind of an overview, the origins of the early development of baseball in the United States?
Well, it's really highly in dispute. Cooperstown, New York, 1939, and what they said was the 100th anniversary of baseball. They opened the Hall of Fame, and there's supposed to be, of course, the Abner Doubleday theory of starting baseball, and there's the Alexander Cartwright theory. There were games played in colonial America, town ball, rounders. There's a lot of base games involving bats and balls that have been played in Europe. It comes to the United States. There's theories even that a big spread of the game was during the American Civil War. So Union soldiers were already playing. It probably does to a great degree have a northeast United States influence. And of course, after the American Civil War ends in 1865, you see the first professional team, the Cincinnati Reds, in 1869. Now, they're a team of paid players traveling. And then the first major league is 1871. The National League is 1876. So the variations of the game as we know it really becomes a modern game for our purposes in the 20th century. The American League begins in 1901. Eventually, they go to the World Series. There's a year skipped. John McGraw with the New York Giants didn't believe that the American League team was worth playing. So there was a skip. And then we have 100+ years of what we kind of think of as the modern game. There have been major changes in the way the game was played, how the baseball itself changed. There was the dead ball era, then Babe Ruth. Now, with 1919 and the Black Sox scandal, there's a huge hit the game takes. So Ruth coming on the other side of that and hitting the ball out of the ballpark, the numbers that Ruth put up were just amazing. He hits 29 home runs one year and like doubles the record for home runs or triples it. And then years later, he hits 59 and he eventually hits 60. So the impact that has on the game and for fan appeal, the fact that he's playing in New York has a lot to do with the popularity of the sport. Clearly now it's not that. Now it's more of an international game. During World War II, and really prior to World War II, the United States was beginning to introduce baseball to Japan. And then, Japan becomes a major player in baseball. And with my experience, of course, in baseball now, I have worked with a ton of kids. I have tons of friends, Dominican friends, guys, that have gotten out of Cuba, that are Cuban players, Venezuelan players. So I think somewhere around 20% of Major League Baseball is Dominican alone. So there's now a very international influence in the game of baseball as well. And, of course, a lot of kids in America, and I know you wanted to address tonight, too, some of the major rule changes to speed the game up. Clearly, I think that's something that has been happening throughout the last 25 to 30 years, if not more, is kids find the game to be boring. They find the game moves at too slow a pace. Basketball, football gets a lot more attention. I do believe in the 60s and 70s, football overtook baseball as a national pastime, or became more important probably in the American psyche as the sport that most people wanted to see. But probably in that sweet spot from World War I, probably through the 60s, Major League Baseball really was what everybody was watching, and that's what they really cared about. And there were some great figures that made that happen in the sport.
Yeah, I can remember, like you said, back in the day, my grandfather taking me up to Cleveland to watch the Indians, But it is remarkable what we've seen in the game of baseball. Speaking of changes, how did the integration of baseball beginnings with Jackie Robinson in 1947 influenced the sport both on and off the field?
Well, I know you probably have heard this quite a bit. Moses Fleetwood Walker played for the Toledo Mud Hens, which was a major league level league of baseball in 1888. And it was Cap Anson and some other prominent players that put together this quote unquote ugly gentleman's agreement that they not sign black players going forward. So what Jackie Robinson really did was break the color barrier from what it once had been black players playing. It was limited in number, but clearly 1947 is, of course, you might be able to see, I got a Jackie Robinson collector's item back here. I think he's a hugely heroic figure in American history. I just recently watched, because I've always been fascinated by him, I just watched a documentary on Satchel Paige. And what's interesting is the real influence that Bob Feller had on getting him on the Indians, and how he and Dizzy Dean really loved Satchel Paige, and they would do all this barnstorming, and the records would reflect that when the black players played with the white players, they played with or outplayed them in many instances. And these white players would come back and say, hey, general managers, there's some black players. Everybody knew that. Everybody clearly knew that. And there's a great story that the New York Yankees could have signed Mays, Aaron, and Mantle. And they passed. They passed on Mays and Aaron, as crazy as that would seem. But when you say the influence in American history, baseball was integrated before the military, 1 year prior to the military. So I think it was in large part at the forefront of the civil rights movement. There's a great story about Robinson in 1944 as a commissioned officer in the United States Army. He was asked by the post commander to ride from one location to another with his wife, the post commander's wife, and was court-martialed in Fort Hood, Texas for not getting to the back of the bus 10 years prior to Rosa Parks. And he won that court martial in large part because his wife and the post commander both testified on his behalf. He was a college-educated man from UCLA. An interesting thing about, I know you know some of the dynamics about white players not wanting to play with him. Saw a documentary several years ago about the Brooklyn Dodgers. And it was interesting about how people grow up in different parts of the world and how they see the world, even in a segregated America at the time. They went to Duke Snider. Dixie Walker was one of the players, and there were some other named players with the Dodgers that got together and carried to Leo DeRocher, who was then the manager. They wouldn't play with Robinson. DeRocher basically told him to stick it, their whole petition. But Snyder says he grows up in Southern California, and they approach him and say, how do you feel about playing with Robinson? He goes, that's my hero. Like, he was a running back at UCLA. Like, I watched him on Saturdays. So Duke Snider, white guy in Southern California, is like, are you kidding? I'd be honored to be on the field with Jack. I don't think I'm not of the ability and talent to be on the field with him. So he grows up in a different part of the world. He sees Jackie Robinson as a collegiate hero at UCLA playing multiple sports. He died at 53, Robinson, diabetes, and some other things. And some say he died of a broken heart.
Yeah.
Sad story. But I'll tell you another hero in all the race relation stuff is Ted Williams. I think, a lot of players love Ted Williams. Satchel Paige loved Ted Williams. Ted Williams in 1966 at his induction in the Hall of Fame was the first man to stand up on that podium and say black gentlemen needed to be in the Hall of Fame that played in the Negro Leagues. And some of that comes out later is Williams grew up in San Diego. His mother was Mexican. And he caught some of the slurs or he caught some of the glances and things of his mother being Mexican. And Pumpsy Green, who just passed away a few years ago, in 1959 is the first black gentleman to play for the Red Sox. And I saw him on this interview, and it was so great. He said, I come in. I'm the first black to play for the Boston Red Sox. I'm a little bit scared. I go into spring training. I go in the locker room. The first guy to go, hey, let's go out and get a catch is Ted Williams. And he said, my first buddy that really looked out for me and took care of me was the biggest star on the team, and it was Ted Williams. So there's a lot great. Williams was an interesting character for sure. But 2 wars, a Marine and a pilot and a war hero and all the rest. He's a pretty special man.
Yeah.
And he's still in cryogenic, isn't he? Isn't his
that's the
story
argument.
there?
Yeah, the kids were battling over that. Of course, the one son died, I think, of leukemia just years later. He was 36 years old. So he had a daughter from one marriage and a son and a daughter from his last marriage. And I believe the oldest daughter was sort of fighting with the younger siblings over what was going to happen to him after his death. And I think there were some mixed arguments about whether that's what he really wanted. But to my understanding, he was placed in some type of a lab after his death. And I was really saddened by the fact that became such a big part of his life story. Bob Costas, I remember years ago, has got Williams on an interview, and I thought it was the greatest line ever. He goes, you're the guy that John Wayne played. And Williams was like, yeah, okay. And I saw Williams speak live once, and it was great. It was at a hot stove with in front of a lot of college baseball players. And he stood up and he said, young man, one day you'll tell your grandchildren that you saw Ted Williams. And he was tall, lean, and good looking. That's how he opened.
In 2020, Major League Baseball announced that statistics from the Negro League would be incorporated into official MLB leaderboards. What did you think about that, and how did you feel when they finally started incorporating these numbers into Major League Baseball history?
Well, as someone that looks at that as a stain on American history that black players weren't allowed to play, and that it took, the Robinson thing, but that's also sort of a victory. The stories that I can tell about a Williams, reaching across, in the movie 61, you saw the depiction, Billy Crystal's depiction, and it was supposed to be a pretty well-known story. Mickey Mantle probably did not see a black person in his life until Elston Howard, really. But Elston Howard, as a young player, the first black to play for the Yankees, said when they were in St. Petersburg, Florida, and couldn't go into an all-white restaurant, he would sit on the bus and eat dinner with him. That's Mickey Mantle. Why? I mean, why would Mickey? So Mickey Mantle's a pretty squared away guy. But again, it's a stain on American history. It's clearly not the best baseball product that could have been on the field. The problem, I think, for some with the records is they're so incomplete. Like if you look at probably the greatest example, Josh Gibson, they have him now as having the highest batting average on record with probably less than a fifth of the hits that Ty Cobb has, but who knows? So he hits 171 home runs, I think, that MLB is recognizing in the Negro Leagues. But many people said with less or with more complete history, he might have hit 800 home runs. But he barnstormed. He played in the Dominican Republic. He played in Puerto Rico. So, but do I think that the Negro Leagues were a major league? Absolutely. And do I think the players, clearly, if you watch the 60s, look at the National League, the dominance over the American League in the All-Star game. It's like 17 out of 18 All-Star game. Who did they run out there every year? Mays, Aaron, Stargell, McCovey. They would run those same guys out there year after year and beat the hell out of the American League, who was not as integrated. So clearly the black players belonged in the major leagues. So it should definitely be recognized. But sadly, there's a great deal of a really lack of knowledge of what the records really are. But do I think these players should be honored, and do I think their numbers should be recognized as legit? Absolutely. They were great players. And, you know, it's something you can't really undo the stain of what happened in the wrong, but they definitely were players of a major league caliber.
Now, we generally have some gentlemen on here that call themselves baseball purists, and we tease them about having like the old man with the black socks running the kid off the lawn.
That's right.
So when we start talking about changes to the game, speeding up the game, of course, they're all about keeping the game pure. So Major League Baseball has implemented several rule changes to improve the pace of the play. Could you outline some of the key changes introduced in recent years? Purists might not. Well, like for instance, me, the guy on second base. Please, I mean, come on, yeah.
No, I'm with you, bro. I'm not a big fan either, but okay. Kind of backing up. One I didn't like, I think it was 2017 rule change. I didn't like the no longer throw the 4 pitches for the walk, because there's a lot of great baseball history around that single act. I believe it was the 72 World Series. It's A's and Cincinnati Reds and Oakland A's. And a runner leaves and steals second base, opening up first. They had started to intentionally pass. They start to intentionally pass bench with 2 strikes. When the runner takes the base, they act like they're going to put him on. Then they throw one right down the middle of the plate and strike him out. And bench takes the pitch. And the next day, he's sitting with Kurt Gowdy trying to explain why the hell he wasn't paying attention to the fact that Hunter threw a pitch right down the middle. I remember Miguel Cabrera hit a home run on an intentional pass because the guy got it too close to the plate. That's part of history. And so now you're just saying put him on. There's so many things that could happen in those 4 pitches that I think are still part of the game. Now, what you're saying about putting the runner at second, of course, they're playing that as kind of an international rule too. When you go into extra innings to try to speed the end of the game, you put a runner at second. You play out the inning. And a lot of purists don't like that. I didn't think I'd like the clock with the pitching, but I do think that's actually a good move. I
do like that.
Yeah. I think that's worked out pretty well. And I've talked to some kids. I've worked with a lot of kids in pro ball, and I've had an opportunity to talk to them, and they're like, you get acclimated to whatever. Now, I had Justin Verlander on a fall ball team, so I saw him as a 17-year-old. I haven't talked to Justin in years, and, he's a Hall of Famer now. But when he was pitching in college, he pitched at Old Dominion University in Norfolk, Virginia, and his great coach, Tony Guzzo, that we all loved, just passed away. He was a special, special friend of all of us in the baseball community here. He was big on guys moving fast. So when he got to pro ball, a lot of people were asking Verlander, like, man, why do you work so fast? Because my coach told me to pitch in the next 10 seconds. The infielders don't fall asleep. The game moves faster. So that's just the player that was sort of taught to work at a fast pace. So if you looked at him prior to the rule change, he worked at a fast pace anyway, which I think is advantageous. The players don't fall asleep. But I do think that's a good change. What is it now? The throw over twice, throw over the third time, don't get the runner, he gets second, or he gets the next base on the pickoff. I think that's a problem for me, because I think it's kind of unnatural. Just if a guy gets two extended leads and dives back, he knows on the third one, the guy's got to get him, or he gets the base. That seems a little unnatural. But what they're trying to do with the larger bases, from a 15-inch base to an 18-inch base, you talk about safety issues with that. Okay, that's great. And what does it make it roughly 6 inches closer? Well, it's 3 inches closer on the front side for the guy running down the first baseline, beating out a ground ball. It has shown that there's been less injuries around the bases, and it's also shown that the offense is up. Stolen bases are way up.
But Jack, do you remember when the second baseman's hat used to be the base? I mean, yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. We did that. Yeah, or put somebody's glove on the ground. Yeah.
I mean, 18 inches. I mean, well.
No, I know. I tell you what bothers me more about the game, and I know I'm going to get some old man get off my lawn for this, but I just think it's in all sports, and I think it's so ridiculous in football that it drives me crazy. It's all this rah-rah mentality, scream, holler, the way they're cheerleaders now. There's so many of the old unwritten rules that are crossed now. There were things that you did. You looked at somebody wrong, you got drilled, your teammate got drilled. It's just, I think the game has gotten ridiculous with all the celebration stuff, but all I hear, generally here is like, okay, coach, well, now things are changing. The kids want to be more into celebration. They want to be more into their emotions. And there was just a time that it was considered Bush League, or it was considered Little League. It wasn't considered the way the game was supposed to be played. And like I said, it's far worse than pro football. It's a 31-10 game. A team picks up a fumble. They run down and they pose for the end of they go down to the end zone and go running down, and they're down by 21 points. And it looks silly to me. And I think if you look up man in the dictionary, we would still agree that Jim Brown's in that picture. And I remember Jim Brown being asked why he handed the ball to the official. He said, in my day, you were considered a chump if you celebrated. You were considered less than a man. You hand the ball to the official, you act like a man, and knew you were going to be back there before the day was out and do it again. And I'd take my cues from Jim Brown before I would some of the players playing today. Now, of course, I kind of diverted to football, but I was a pretty big fan of Jim Brown.
Yeah. But talk a little bit more about the pitch clock, and how do you think good, bad?
No, again, I think it's okay. I mean, it's like it was 15 seconds with nobody on base, 20 seconds with somebody on base. I know they went, and then the hitter has to get in the box within 8 seconds of the time running out. And I don't even remember all the facts on this, but Scherzer found a loophole, remember, early on. Then they had to change the rule because in spring training, he sort of figured out when the guy had to get in, and he quick pitched him. And they're like, okay, we got to make another rule change to overcome that. So some guys are trying to short circuit the rule. They're trying to find, some competitive advantage. But it's worked itself out. So if the underlying impact of it is the game moves faster, I think it's good. I don't think it hurts pitcher or hitter either. I think hitters spending too much time thinking about what's going on, or certainly pitchers trying to over-process what to do next, is not good. You're better off to keep moving.
Just from a fan's perspective, I go to a few Pirates games, unfortunately, every year, but it's really not very noticeable.
It's not. No, I agree with you.
It's just that, maybe you drink one less beer. I mean, that's what it comes down to.
Well, I think the last study said that the games from prior to the rule have been decreased in duration the entire game by about 20 minutes. But it does make a difference. Yeah. Well, they're saying, though, that people, especially young couples, they got a couple of kids and they got them in soccer practice, that and the other. if they're going to carve out some time for the entertainment value of going to a ball game, they got to kind of know, can I work this into the schedule? And if the game's going to be 4 hours, it just doesn't seem so great. And then, if you get into a more manageable amount of time, getting off work, getting to the game, getting home in time to get some sleep to go to the next day of work, it's going to make it, and it has made an impact on attendance.
In that 20 minutes, that 20-minute time, that's a bunch of dead time when nothing's going on anyway.
That's right.
For the most part. So
and
that rule I kind of like, actually.
I do too.
And now most parks I know out here in San Diego, right out in the center field, there's a park for the kids and interactions and things like that. So, but how do you think these, like you said, that extra 20 minutes? Do you think that it has an impact on fan engagement and the attendance of the games?
Yes, because again, we're all hearing it. I mean, we could throw out ages, but I think all of us are over the age of 21, probably quite a bit, right? So we would all look at it like, if we grew up loving baseball, as I did, we kept score. Like, we literally took the time to learn all the positions on the field and what 6 to 4 to 3 meant. And we were into the game that way. So going out on a Saturday evening, a professional baseball game or whatever level, keeping score, being, you're sitting there like, okay, the count's this. Is he going to go? Should he steal it? You're thinking that way. We have a lower attention span society. There's no question about it. So if you're going to try to draw in younger people and you've got a game that appears to be very slow moving and boring, they're not going to watch it. And again, I think that's some of the other bells and whistles that they're putting in. But I coached in one of the fairly better, or what's considered or recognized as one of the better college leagues a couple of summers ago. And I really noticed the kids don't think in terms of, I want to play in the big leagues anymore. And I'm not kidding. They're really into who on social media had the best bat flip. This is kind of what I was alluding to earlier. Is how did they show up the last pitcher? Like, oh gosh, look, you flipped the bat 47 feet. And I'm like, that's what you guys. Because when I was growing up, like, Yastrzemski was my favorite player. Then it was Jim Rice with the Red Sox. And you would get the one day a week. You might get, Mel Allen doing baseball this week in baseball. And you got a sense of a little bit of what happened in the last week. And you watch the highlights to see the greatness of the players. And I think more they're into now, they're into the spectacle of it. But if that's what's getting, MLB is a business. They got to get people in. They can't be purists and make no money.
That's true. Looking ahead, is there anything, are there any additional rule changes that you see maybe coming down the pike to influence the pace or the excitement of the game?
There's two things.
The guy on second and third? Yeah,
Well, I think in some levels of baseball that is done. If 2 doesn't do it, they'll go to, second and third. But I think that's a different levels. That's a different rule change. But I got a friend of mine that coaches in the Atlantic League, and it's probably the top independent league, and they get experimented on all the time. So a couple of years ago, they made a 61-foot mound instead of 60 feet 6 inches, and there was a lot of guys. It's a AAA&a-half league. So you get a lot of big leaguers that are trying to get a second chance. They're 29-year-old guy that's had some time in the big leagues. They don't want to put up bad numbers. So it really hurt them in getting players because they didn't want to go to this experimental distance. One of the other experimental rules was going to the umpire, having an earpiece. He has to be there to call things like foul balls off the foot, that type of thing. And he's got to be there for plays at the plate. But what they're literally doing is putting an earpiece in. They bring in this unit like Doppler radar, and it's catching the strike zone batter to batter, and it's telling them in their ear what the pitch is. And there's been a big call for that's going to happen in the majors. So the night I see my buddy, he's a bench coach down at High Point, North Carolina in the Atlantic League, and he tells me, he goes like, hey, tonight, check this out. They're going to be doing that because they've been experimenting with that in our league. And no kidding. Like, he goes, we don't even, but this is supposed to be part of the shortening the game. We don't even argue with the umpire. He has to go with whatever goes in his ear based upon the equipment. And I'm not kidding. A pitcher bounces the ball into the batter's box, the other batter's box, and the catcher blocks it up. And he comes out straight, and he calls it a strike. And they're all looking at each other, but it was a misreading of the equipment, and he has to give that call. Now, do I think they'd clean it up by the time they got to the big leagues? Yes. Now, what they are doing at AAA, I go to a lot of games in Norfolk for the Orioles at AAA, the Norfolk Tides, and they have, I think it's 2 challenges a game. Maybe you've seen some of this in minor league baseball. A pitch is thrown, it's a pivotal pitch, and the hitter's like, I don't think that was a strike. They'll go to they superimpose this, or they put this on the big screen camera outside right field, and it'll go right down to the inch. And if it touches any part of the zone, sit down, buddy, you're wrong. It was a strike, or it just missed and it's ball. And they get 2 challenges a game. So I think something of that nature, because the technology's there to more perfect the strike zone, is going to come about. Now, I don't know about the bases ever. I don't think we already have replay. We have replay now. But, yeah, I think it's going to the plate. I definitely think it's going to the plate. They're going to start using that.
Don, you and Dave got some questions for our guests or observations?
Well, I was just I'm just enjoying hearing all the baseball knowledge, because now my brother, my nephew, he married into a baseball family. His father-in-law pitched major leagues, I think 12 years, and so I guess that from him. But I just like hearing the history of the sport. I mean, it is our oldest sport, and you're talking about where it began. I'm also a history major, so I know that Abner Doubleday did not invent baseball.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, but they said that his troops, that was their favorite pastime, played baseball. He just happened to be in the Union Army that liked to play the game. But I just enjoy everything. Right now I am a graduate of the University of Texas, and so we are a baseball power.
Yeah.
Got beaten extra innings by UTSA last night, but Texas lost 2 games this year in baseball, and they both been extra innings. One went 8 innings, and then the other one went 10 innings, and then last night was 12 innings. So I'm all about. I'm ready. I love college baseball. I hope UT gets back to Omaha. Things are looking great.
I love Texas too, by the way.
Yeah.
It's a great state. Big fan.
Yeah, my stepbrother played for High Point.
Yeah.
High Point College back in the day. Back in the, I guess it would have been in the late 70s. He played there. But love the 21 on your wall. Love it.
Yeah, he's the best football player I ever saw.
I thought that was a baseball jersey.
No. That's Sean Taylor.
Oh,
the reason I have that is Sean Taylor. I was the last game he played before his death against the Eagles. And when he left that day with the knee injury, I'm like, he'll be back in a couple of weeks. Then he's killed in his own home, as we know. And then I went to the Buffalo game, and that was given. You could probably see my other Redskin memorabilia. I'm a big Redskin fan. But they gave out a towel for I know I'm in Williamsburg, so this is the home of Lawrence Taylor, who is, to me, the greatest football player ever, and he's from Virginia. But it's Rice, Brown, but, Lawrence Taylor's in the conversation. But I never saw LT live, but Sean Taylor that I did was the best football player I ever saw.
Wow. Well, that's my mistake. I mistook it for Roberto Clemente.
I'm a big fan of Clemente too, though. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I got to go 2 years ago. They were celebrating his anniversary of being inducted into the Hall of Fame. They have a buddy that's a big, huge baseball nut down in Georgia, and he got me into the dinner up in Pittsburgh, which was really cool. Got to meet a couple of his sons, and that was a blast. But I guess where do you see baseball going? I mean, like, do you think that, like with the replays of the balls and strikes, do you think that they're going to have robots calling balls and strikes?
It's been talked about.
Where do you see the game going, both good and bad in the future?
I think the biggest problem with American baseball is travel baseball. And I've done a show on this. The travel baseball industry has turned Well, I'll back up and say it this way. When I was doing play representation, part of me, being out there, I'm an attorney, I'd go out there and do representation. I met a lot of older scouts. And I had an older scout say to me one time, he goes, "You know what's wrong with the youth?" And I said, "What's that, sir?" And he goes, "You don't play sandlot enough anymore. They used to go to a vacant lot and play, and the kid that brought the ball or the one that could kick everybody else's ass, that's the one that made the rules, and you learn to get along. And you didn't think of adults running everything. So now everything is micromanaged. Everybody's got a pitching coach and I've partaken in that. I mean, that's part of what I do. But everybody's got a hit instructor or a pitching coach, and they really don't know how to play. So I'm working with college kids now. I'm working with the staff of college kids that are junior college level. And all they know is how hard they throw, how much vertical drop there is on their, fastball or their sinking pitches. And there's like these pitching mills out that are teaching them that all these metrics and measurables are what makes you a pitcher. And they don't know anything about the game. And because they don't know anything about the game, American kids are kind of being displaced. And one of the big problems, I think, although I had a gentleman on my show the other day who formed his father just recently got an award for the Virginia Coaches Association as starting the first all-black Little League in Richmond in Virginia in 1966 because he couldn't play. And then they took in all kids. They started as a black Little League. They took in all kids. And I was talking to him about Major League Baseball, as far as black participation, American black kids is below after Jackie Robinson integrated the sport. Now, the black kids I work with in pro ball tend to say, "Yeah, coach, I get a lot of, why aren't you playing basketball and football?" So culturally, black kids just aren't playing. And, I think it's sad, but you can't force kids if they don't love something to do it. But I think the very thing I talked about when we hit that sweet spot of the 60s and Stargell and Aaron and Mays and those guys were playing, those kids just aren't playing as much.
Yeah. And so I mean, the black kids are dual sports,
Often.
Yeah, Michael Jordan, basketball, baseball. Deion Sanders, basketball, baseball. Pat Mahomes, baseball, football. I mean,
but the best of them all was Bo Jackson.
Yeah, Bo Jackson. Yeah.
Bo was the best of them all.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, I think he could have been a Hall of Famer in two sports. But
definitely.
Yeah, I was a big Bo fan.
I'd like to ask you something that we've discussed on this program quite a bit, and that's injuries to pitchers.
Yes, sir.
What do you think it's the pace of the game? Do you think it's, like you said, like how much torque can I mean, you see kids now getting Tommy Johns in anticipation of.
Oh, yeah. You're absolutely right. Okay, let me throw out a name here. One of my best friends in the world is Tom House. I've known Tom for 30 plus years. He's famous more now for the quarterbacks than probably anything he's ever done. Drew Brees, Tom Brady. So I have learned a ton about pitching injuries from him. And really the reality is the number one cause of pitching injuries is pitching. If you throw a ball, there's some risk of injury. But when kids train to throw, there is a lot of information that would suggest year-round playing has had a lot to do with kids getting hurt. So Tom is big. Are you guys familiar with Tom House pitching the big leagues? Nolan Ryan's pitching coach, but he got really big. Okay. So Tom really got deep dive into the studies of throwing like weighted balls. And there's a lot of science that would suggest that when guys throw multiple weighted balls, like grow up throwing rocks at your sister, but you throw the football in the fall and then you shoot the basketball in the winter and you throw the baseball in the spring. The variety of weights of balls and the different things that your body learns to do in those different sports all helps you to be a more well-rounded athlete. Study came out a few years ago that multiple sport athletes are 39% less likely to be injured in any sport. Right.
Wow.
So, yeah. And so would I bring up Bo Jackson or Deion or Brian Jordan, who was an all-pro in football and an all-star in baseball? And that's what kids did. They played baseball in the spring and through the summer, and they went and played football. And they might play basketball in the winter. But kids are now playing 11 months a year. And when you get into the more warm weather climates, they're throwing too much. Another problem, and it comes into the travel ball, is that kids are chasing the scholarships. They're chasing the chance to play at the big university and all the different things that they think come with being a top prospect. So they'll lie and play on multiple teams. So they'll go pitch for this one travel team. They come out for this other travel team. It's not even aware they're playing for the other team. How you feeling, Timmy? I think I can throw today. So he goes, I throws 5 more innings. And another thing about throwing is when you throw the baseball on flat ground, you run through the system 2 times body weight out through the arm. If you're on a mound working downhill, it's 6 times body weight. So as Tom often says, and put in a plug for Tom, he's my favorite, but his line has often been kids pitch too much and throw too little. And as kids do not play catch flat ground and do the kind of work that you need to do. But really what pitching and injury comes down to is a balance between your decelerators and your accelerators. When you throw the baseball, you accelerate your arm through delivery. You have to be able to decelerate. So if you don't have the proper stop, kids do the wrong kind of weightlifting. There's a lot of things that come into it, but I do think it's overuse on the mound, not enough throwing, and not enough multiple sport things that you pick up from the different sports that will lead you to be a healthier athlete. And guys used to hurt their arms years ago, no doubt. But I also do think, now I got a buddy that's another arm care guy that says velocity in and of itself is never the culprit. It's not just throwing hard. But when kids try to throw hard, you made a great point to me the last time we were talking. When kids try to throw hard and it's at the expense of location, what do they naturally do? They throw more pitches. Mm-hmm. If they're constantly walking people, they're missing their spots, and they're constantly throwing extra pitches, that does put more stress. So if you're trying to throw as hard as you can at the expense of location and command, you will throw more pitches and possibly lead to injury. But it's a pretty complex thing. But if I were to say to kids, hey, throw the football, do other things. And I'd like to see baseball become a thing too, where it's a seasonal sport and not all year. Because I do think there's an overuse issue.
Hey, well, Jack, thank you so much for visiting with us tonight. I know these guys appreciate all the knowledge that you gave us. You want to give us, you got any books out, anywhere we can find you? What's going on there, man?
I appreciate you guys have been wonderful. Just have the opportunity to speak to you guys about something I'm really, have a lot of passion about. I am on YouTube. I'm on Rumble. And you can find all of the locations you can find me to talk about the Kennedy assassination, law, politics, whatever, at More to Consider. My name, Moore, toconsider.com. You can go to that, moretoconsider.com, and see all my links there.
So, Jack,
Yes, sir.
one last question.
Yes, sir.
Did Oswald act alone?
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
And
I think one of the things that's coming out, though, is not so much about the assassination, but it's the scope of activities of some of the agencies within the United States that
you guys got a quick
amazing.
Minute. Got a quick minute before you go?
Yeah. Let's
1994, I'm in Dealey Plaza. Guy comes running down the hill in a suit. I just finished my master's thesis. Guy comes running down the hill. He goes, hey, what do you think happened? I'm like, I'm one of those crazy people think Oswald did it. Come with me. So we go up on the hill and argue with the guys, got 14 shooters from all these locations. We pull away, and the guy goes, hey, dude, you really know your stuff. What's your story? I'm like, well, I wrote a master's thesis. You too. Where are you from? What's your story? He goes, well, I'm from Northern Virginia. My daddy's somebody. So this is 1994. I'm 32 at the time. This guy's about 35. And I said, what do you mean your daddy's somebody? He goes, well, when the House Select Committee on Assassinations in the late 70s started their investigation, Dad made some phone calls and got me a position as a page on the House Select Committee. So I sat there in Congress and watched everything. Then he said, what are you doing tomorrow? So we go out to the 1026 North Beckley Avenue, Oswald's rooming house. We go out to the Neely Street address with the backyard. We pull right up in where the backyard photograph was taken. We go out to Jefferson where he's arrested. We go everywhere. So at the end of it, he said, look, I fly for American Airlines. I go back tomorrow. Can you drive me to the airport? I drove my car from Virginia to Dallas. Can you drive me to the airport tomorrow so I can save my cab fare? I was like, sure. So I drive him there, and it hits me, and this played out to be true. I never saw him again. I'm sitting in the front seat of my car. He grabs his American Airlines garment bag and gets out, and I lean over the seat. And I said, hey, brother, I'm not ever see you again. What am I not going to find out for 50 years? And he leans back in the car and he goes, dude, Oswald did it. I saw everything. The problem is who he did it for. He was so dirty with government connections. That's what they're hiding. He told me that in 1994. But he said all the triple shooters, all the single bullet theory works, is no question. But he said, I'm telling you. Now, what I believe this whole dump of information is going to show is that the CIA did know how dangerous Oswald was and that they should have known what was going to happen. And clearly a government agent with egg on their face is going to like cover everything up. And that's all they did was they covered up their attachment. Dulles sat on the Warren Commission and knew they were trying to kill Castro through the mob. The CIA was in bed with the mob trying to kill Castro. He never told Earl Warren or the rest. So that tells you right there, they were all covering their ass. That's what I think you're going to find. But yeah, Oswald did it. No question, in my mind.
Yeah. And Abner Doubleday, he was at Fort Sumter whenever it fell, right?
I've heard that story. Yeah. So that was 1861 when the thing started. Yeah, it was a federal fort out there, and they bombed it. Yep.
So Jack, you like history. So the commander at Fort Sumter was a guy named Robert Anderson,
Mm-hmm.
and he had been an artillery instructor at West Point.
Mm-hmm.
And his top student was a guy named Pierre Beauregard, who was fighting for Confederacy. So Beauregard bombarded his favorite college professor to start the Civil War.
He lit off the first shot, right?
Yeah. So
Beauregard.
So in my bookcase, I have Beauregard's dictionary from when he served in the Mexican War. It's a Spanish to French dictionary.
Wow.
Because his first language was French. He was a Creole from Louisiana.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a little artifact I have. I have his dictionary, but
that's cool.
Yeah.
Well, the quirks of history. All those guys that were at West Point together are now, fighting against each other. So, that kind of connection was really interesting.
Yeah. There's a book I read. It's called The Class of 1846, and it talks about how all these guys were friends at A.P. Hill.
Yeah.
And McClellan dated the same woman, and she chose McClellan because A.P. Hill, they found he had syphilis or gonorrhea. So yeah, it's all crazy.
But I always thought that the thing that was the most interesting is how Booth's brother saved Lincoln's son
at the train station.
At the train station, I just thought that was the most interesting. And would not have known really what the impact of that was. And
kept him getting crushed between the car.
And that's something.
We have our own history podcast.
Okay.
I'd be down on it.
Well, I love that. Yeah. You guys are awesome. We got to do this again.
Nice meeting you, Jack.
Yeah, man.
Definitely will. I thought I'd surprise. Like I said, I thought I'd surprise the guys with a little baseball talk tonight. So I will definitely be looking to have you back there, Jack. And we appreciate your time, my man.
God bless you, gentlemen. Take care.
Take care.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.
Bye. Well, guys, a little treat. I thought, some of the other guys, some of our Black Sox guys might be on, but hey, it is what it is. I hope you guys enjoyed that little segment there.
Oh, Bill would have eaten that up, and Demetrius, both of them.
I know. So, do we have a Sue's Corner tonight?
Yes, we do.
All right.
Yes, we do. So, here's Sue's Corner. She says, some days I feel every one of my years weighing down on me. And what makes it even harder to accept is when you read about all these great young phenoms coming up in the ranks. We talked about the young Formula One kid a couple weeks ago. Now we're seeing a few others in some other sports. Two outstanding examples played this past weekend. In National Women's League Soccer, Mock Whitman made history when she entered Gotham's match against the Seattle Reign in the 93rd minute late Saturday night as the 14-year-old became the youngest player to ever play in a National Women's Soccer League game. The teenager played roughly 7 minutes of stoppage time. 14 years old, just imagine. There's lots of rules set up to protect these young whippersnappers. For example, in Mock's case, players must also live with a parent or guardian until their 18th birthday, along with other stipulations from the league, including those about housing and tuition. Gotham will have to monitor New Jersey state law. The law in New Jersey, where Gotham plays its games, prevents 14 and 15-year-olds from working past 7 p.m. during the school year. That would have messed me up because I used to work past that when I was a kid. That can be extended to 9 p.m. in the summer with parental permission. So no night games for Mock until the summer. The other kid that really showed chutzpah was 16-year-old Mira Andreeva, who defeated number one Ariana Sabalenka in the finals of the Indian Springs Paribas Open last weekend. Believe me, Sabalenka is a tough cookie and had Andreeva down the first set. Sue was a very good tennis player. Somehow this kid was able to pull out the second and third set, and quite honestly, it didn't even look that close. She just dominated. In Dubai, she became the youngest winner of the WTA 1000 level tournament, the tier just below the Grand Slams, since the format started in 2009. She is the youngest women's player to appear in the final at Indian Wells since Kim Clijsters, who was also 17, did it in 2001. Both of these kids will be worth keeping an eye on. So that's Sue's Corner. So,
Yeah, I remember Cloisters. Yeah, when she was the phenom. Yeah,
yeah, but 14 years old playing in a major league soccer. I remember in D.C. when they had a professional team here, and there was a young kid. He was like 15, I think, that played for them, 15 or 16. But that's unbelievable.
yeah, yeah. I mean, you can go back to Pele, I guess, for the some of the youngest phenoms to play, especially soccer. But yeah, it's very like when you talk about some of these young kids, young phenoms. They come in every sport, like you said. Last week we were talking about a guy that's racing cars at almost 175 miles an hour. Yeah,
Right.
you know, yeah. Uh, some of our younger generation are really to be commended. They're not all gang members or sitting around trying to do bad stuff. But
Or
let's talk.
keyboard jockeys.
There you go. uh, let's talk a little March Madness here. Don, I noticed that you were a little upset about the Longhorns men's team making the big dance, but you weren't. You were kind of happy about the ladies.
Yeah.
What's happening there, Don?
Well, so I wasn't unhappy that Texas made it. I was kind of like, well, so let me explain this. You can be like flabbergasted that they made it because they don't deserve to be there, but they're in. They're in. It is what it is, and so I'm going to cheer for them, but they don't deserve to be there. They. I mean, but they're not the only team that doesn't deserve to be there. Apparently, North Carolina isn't belong there either. So now the women, number one in the nation, they're number one seed. They'll probably get to the Final Four. They'll probably be in a championship game. Should be. Um, but the men, they're. I mean, Crystal Conte, the athletic director, it's been leaked that Coach Terry has to win 2 games in the tournament to keep his job.
Well, they're up 41-28 over Xavier at the moment. in the play-in, but then they got to play. Who is it? If they win, they got to play the number 1 seed
Yeah.
in their division. But still, it looks like they if this keeps up, they can beat Xavier. Then they played their way into the tournament.
There's a lot of Texas fans, and this is bad. I'm not one of them, by the way. But if you go to message boards, they're hoping that Texas loses, so they can go out and spend and drop the bag of money on a top coach. If you look at Terry now, I like Coach Terry. He's a great guy. Um, he recruits well, but if you look at his overall record, the places he's been, he's a 500 coach. He's he's just not. He hasn't been like ball busting that type of guy. Just so there's a lot of people out there who um, wants to bring in the next Coach K or whatever. So
So, Don, you got any favorites for the tournament?
you know
I'll put it like this: Duke or the field? Who you got?
the who?
The field. Everybody else. Duke or everybody else? Who you got?
Auburn has been playing great all year. They are SEC, but I really don't have a clear cut favorite right now. I think that because it is March Madness, there's going to be a team out there that's going to go out and pop someone unexpectedly. And what team was it? God, who was it a few years ago? They had the good luck nun.
Was it Villanova?
No, it wasn't. It was a Catholic school. Sister.
No. Was it UConn?
No.
Oh, the Cinderella team.
Yeah.
That one coach.
What was it? Loyola?
Might have been Loyola.
Yeah, I think it might have been Loyola. Yeah,
I know it's a Catholic, but they had a good luck nun. I mean, no one predicted that they'd be out there. And every year it seems like Gonzaga is always a player. I mean, so you just never know. That's what makes this time of year so interesting. And it will be in San Antonio. So I'm looking at talking to my brother and his connections, see if I can't get me a ticket or two.
Okay, all right. Yeah, Houston's also, I think, a number 1 seed.
Yep.
Personally, I like. I'm kind of like what you said, Don. I like Auburn. My Cinderella team would be St. John's, but like you said, there's always someone. Dave, you got anybody Duke of the field?
Well, I mean, if the one kid that had the hurt foot, if he's able to play, I think I'll go with Duke.
Cooper, what's his name? Flag or something like that.
Yeah, because he couldn't. I don't think he played the last couple games in the ACC tournament. But if he's able to play, I like Duke's chances. But Florida has a pretty good team.
Yes, they're another number 1.
They could. That's not normally a team that you would expect to be in the Final Four, but that might be an interesting one. And
I don't think Florida's been to the finals since the Lopez brothers.
Yeah, I mean, that's just not somebody that you expect to see there year in and year out. So, and I kind of like when you get some fresh blood in there.
Yeah, I think the 4 number 1s, I haven't really looked. It's probably Duke, Houston. Who's the other one? Out west.
Isn't it Auburn?
Yeah, there's four regions.
Florida, Auburn, Duke, and Houston.
Houston, okay. Yeah. Don, what's that? The West region? You got the finals in San Antonio, or just the regionals?
What's that?
Do you have the finals in San Antonio,
Yes,
or just okay?
it's the finals.
Oh, all right. Well, uh, last week, guys, we talked about the portal a little bit, and we were talking.
Before we leave the March Madness, what I wanted to mention was, you asked for like, outlook. Um, I read somewhere that the number 11 seeds have they've had quite a few upsets in the first round over the years.
Yeah,
And so I was looking at some of those matches, and so you have like North Carolina is number 11 going up against number 6 Ole Miss. And, that might be one, or you have, well, Texas, this would be a long shot. If Texas does beat Xavier, then they would go up against Illinois or Drake over Missouri. Um, So those are just a couple of examples that might be some 11 seeds that might surprise a higher seeded team in the first round.
yeah. We've had I think one or two number 16s be the number one in the last uh, 4 or 5 years. So yeah, I mean, it. Sometimes there's a lot of parity and a lot of just plain luck. In order to get through this one and done tournament. But guys, let's talk a little NFL here. We've still got some things to talk about. The Bungles, they reloaded. They got Chase and Higgins. They signed the 4-year extensions. Joe Burrows is happy. I don't know about our division because this move almost makes us number 3. What's your thoughts here, Dave?
We're still on basketball.
No, we're talking about the.
He's talking about the Bengals now.
Bengals aren't going to have any defense. How are they going to afford a defense? I think they got like 40% of their salary cap wrapped up in those 3 players that you just named.
Yes, they do. Yes.
So, maybe they'll have a shot in the March Madness next year. I mean, they're going to be dangerous, and if they have just a half decent defense, maybe they'll be a playoff team. I mean, they're betting their farm. It's almost the opposite of Pittsburgh has all their money invested in the defense, and you can see the woes that they're having on offense. Well, the Bengals have gone the exact opposite and put all their money. And I'm just wondering, with all that money on those 3 players, as much for the defense, but what kind of an offensive line are they going to put together? Because if they have an offensive line that's not keeping the pass rush off of Burrows, it could be a long season too.
Well, Burrows is not known for a quarterback that can stay upright because of that line. But you know, it's hard to, in some cases, to outscore them because that's like you said. That's what they're not planning on stopping anybody. They're planning on putting 35 or more points up on the scoreboard, and then you catch up if you can. Uh, Don, what do you think about uh, this move here by the Bungles getting T. Higgins and Chase signed? And Joe Burrow's happy, but as Don says, what are they going to do for defense?
Well, we're going to do on defense, and you'd think they'd bolster the offensive line a little bit because if Burrow's on his back, he's not going to complete many passes, and we know he is injury prone. I think that Higgins and Chase. I mean, these are great players, but you got to ask yourself, um, is that money well spent? I'm not saying they're not worth the money, but is it well spent? I mean, you have to even out your roster. You know, you have to, um, like Dave said, get yourself a defense, man. Get a couple linebackers, some secondary guys. You can never go wrong with the defensive line. I mean, do something there, you know, because they'll get rolled again if they're not, if they're not careful.
Yeah, and you can't do anything with the Joe Burrows on his back.
Yep.
They proved that they've proven that at least the last 2 years. Well, last year he was relatively healthy, and you can see what he did. But once again, you need that O line. Don, the Redbirds, they did something that I was hoping that my Steelers would do, and that's they signed Cooper Rush to a backup deal uh, for to back up Lamar Jackson. Rush signed a 2-year deal, incentive laden, worth up to 12.2 mil. Uh, Don, were you surprised that the Cowboys let Cooper go that for such a low amount?
Well, okay, so every Wednesday you ask me what I hear coming out of Dallas. So I'll tell you what I heard. Uh, Jerry Jones is going to draft a quarterback
Hmm.
that is going to wait in the wings until Dak's contract runs out. He's gonna dump Dak Prescott like I got dumped the eighth grade social dance. So, and the rumor is it might be Quinn Ewers at UT. We'll see.
Oh,
Yeah,
Ewers.
I know Quinn was being interviewed by the Steelers a few weeks ago, and now he's been hanging out with the Cowboys, and of course he is from South Lake Carroll, which is a suburb of Dallas. So we'll see. I mean that would be that would actually make me uh, pay more attention to Cowboys if Ewers is there.
okay. What do you think, Dave?
Well, I think it's a nice move for Baltimore. In our Steelers town hall Monday, some people did talk about Cooper Rush. What I didn't realize, he's 31. You know, he's not a spring chicken, and so Pittsburgh went with Mason Rudolph instead. Um, but he's like as a starter, I think he's like 9-5. He's had like 14 or 15 starts and doesn't have a bad record. So I guess for Baltimore, it's a good move because they got somebody that's shown that he can step in if Lamar goes down for a couple games that can keep him going because that's a talented team. And so he put up some statistics with Dallas that has some talent, and I think it's a good move by Baltimore.
Yeah, I do too. Like I said, it kind of scares me because I thought that he'd be on the market, and I was hoping that we'd go after him. Uh, $4 million difference, most of it in incentives. Uh, but maybe the Steelers, I guess they know something that at least I don't anyway.
Well, I
Uh,
think they got Rudolph for like around 4 million.
8.
Well, it was a 2-year deal. Wasn't it a 2-year deal for 8 million, or was it
It
for
was a
six?
two-year deal for 8 million.
Yeah,
Uh,
so 4 million a year.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And Cooper is making 6, maybe. Like I said, it's a lot of incentives there. I think he has to pay
I
him.
think he's going to be sitting on. I mean, unless Lamar gets hurt, I don't know how. I don't know what his incentives are, but I don't know.
Right.
Will he get a chance to make them?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So roughly, unless he, you know, makes those incentives, he's still making around maybe five
You know,
mil a year. which is
the
which is still a bargain.
the good thing about Cooper Rush is that he got some significant playing time last 2 years, and he's not a bad quarterback. To be honest, he didn't have the accuracy that Dak does, but he's a little bit more elusive. He can put it. He can throw deep. I mean, he's a legit guy. He just needed some reps, and he got some reps that will serve him well in Baltimore.
Yeah, like I said, this was one of the quarterbacks that I thought that we should have went after if we wanted to make a deal. But you know, hey, the Ravens, got him to me as a steal. Uh, Running backs Miles Sanders and Javante Williams, they joined the Cowboys, but the Cowboys lose 1,000-yard rusher and Enrico Dow. He goes to the Panthers. Uh, is Trevor Lawrence now the number two quarterback? Or, Don, you're saying that the Cowboys are going to draft a quarterback. Is there anything about Micah Parsons, him signing? What's going on there?
I haven't heard. I haven't heard if they signed Michael Parsons or not. But they need to. If they have, they need to. To be honest, I haven't kept up with that point. That part of it. But Michael Parsons is the guy on defense, and you don't want to lose him. They lost the Mario Overshown again. He was coming like gangbusters, but they can't take more hits on defense. They need to get some more some more linebackers to support.
Yeah, I definitely think so. Dave, what do you think about these moves by the Cowboys there? It seems to me the Commanders are getting stronger. Philadelphia is, still looks like a contender. I mean, is it Dallas and the Giants vying for last place in the East? What?
Well, it sounds interesting. What Don was saying about them maybe drafting a quarterback. That would indicate to me that you would probably want to have a veteran backup. And what's Trey Lance's status? Is he a free agent or is he on the roster for 2025?
I believe he's on the roster. I mean, I don't. I think he's a restricted free agent. Dallas can match anybody that talks to him, I believe.
Well, then if that's the case, that kind of makes sense, and it makes even more sense if they're going to be drafting a quarterback, because then you got a veteran backup as you bring Luz or whoever they decide to draft on board. But yeah, I don't know. I thought that he was a free agent, but I could be wrong.
He might be. I'm not sure. I thought that there was talk of both of their backups being free agents, but I knew that Rush was.
Yeah, so if he is, they're gonna need to sign somebody, and why not bring back Trey Lance, and then whoever they draft, bring him along. But in terms of the NFC East, Washington has made a lot of moves, and I think that they're going to be strong. Philadelphia's lost a couple players. We'll have to see how they reload and how the draft goes for these teams. I still think that the Cowboys are a step ahead of the Giants, though.
Yeah, they are.
But
They're the step of the Giants, but they're like 3 steps behind the Commanders and about 6 steps behind the Eagles.
You're going to get us banned in Texas, Don. And, so the Vikings. Now the Vikings, they put the brakes on signing ayahuasca, and they said they're going to stick with their rookie, J.J. McCartney from Michigan. They signed free agents, defensive tackles, Jonathan Allen, and Javon Hargrave. Uh, what do you guys think? It looks like the Vikings are doing what they needed to do. They're addressing their defensive needs, drafting both these tackles. Uh, are the Vikings back in contention next year? Don.
I like the Vikings right now. I think they're making some great moves. JJ McCarty, he had that the injury, but I think he'll bounce back, and I think he will be, a key component in the future for them. They did the right thing. I just said a while ago, you can never go wrong getting defensive linemen, and that's what they did. So yeah, I'm high on Minnesota right now.
We won't mention that you have a soft spot for defensive linemen, Don.
Yeah, I do.
Okay, all right. Dave?
Yeah, I mean, again, similar to what the Commanders are doing, they're putting they're signing people that they think are going to take them to a championship. That's what I see. And now, the big question for Minnesota and for Anthony, whenever he deigns to come back on, is JJ McCarthy the answer? I mean, because Sam Darnold, I mean he got him to the playoffs, and yeah, I mean they didn't go forward, but is JJ? They're making a significant move, and is JJ McCarthy the guy that's going to take him there?
And who's his backup? Who's his backup if he gets hurt?
Oh, I don't know, but it's a step down. I mean, in order for them to move, they're going for a Lombardi. These are the types of moves that they're doing, and it's going to ride on how JJ McCarthy performs, and so that to me that's the gamble that they're taking. If they have to go to their backup, well now their chances of getting to the Super Bowl are diminished, and so and then for the rest of that division, I think Detroit is still going to be up there. I think Green Bay is positioning themselves to be very competitive. I'm not so sure about Chicago, though. I thought that they were going to be strong last year, and then they just Chernobyl. So it might kind of be like a repeat of Detroit and Minnesota setting the tone, and then with Green Bay nipping at their heels.
Yeah, another season where maybe the NFC North might be the most competitive division. Don, and the cup runneth over. The Seattle Seahawks, they signed Cooper Cup, and then they also acquired defensive end DeMarcus Lawrence from the Cowboys. What do you think about the Seahawks out there in the West, their NFC West, Don? It seems like the 49ers, they're getting a lot of their bones picked, a lot of free agents leaving, including, Debo.
They lost Debo, yeah.
Yeah, possibly, an Ayuk trade, so, they lost their backup running back, Mason. He left also. So, they're talking about giving Purdy an extension, but, this might be a 1 or 2 year rebuild for the 49ers. So, what's your thoughts about the moves that the Seahawks have made here lately?
Yeah, I thought the Seahawks did not go to the 49ers. The Seahawks, again, they're like the Vikings. They address their needs. Dallas let the defensive lineman go, and so that's something that they're gonna have to deal with. Um, it doesn't matter who's behind. It doesn't matter who if they get Michael Parsons back or not. They lost Lawrence, so that was a huge because one of the jobs of the defensive lineman is to keep the offensive lineman off your linebackers, and that's a lot of people don't realize that, but that is one of the duties. So Seahawks, they address their needs, and I think that they will. I don't know if they're really ready to contend, but they're in better shape than they were last year. 49ers, wow. I'm a big Brock Purdy fan, but I don't know. Is McCaffrey, is he expected to be back?
He's expected to be back for spring training.
Okay, so well, they're going to need. He's going to get a lot of carries, a lot of passes thrown his way, and he's not quite as young as he used to be. So they need to get in the draft, and they need to address. They need to get like a go-to receiver. Maybe add another running back.
They lost Bosa. They lost two
Oh, that's
defensive
right, they did. Fuck that. Well, yeah. So they
backs.
they have a lot of needs to be addressed, and so maybe they keep Purdy at that $800 minimum rookie season thing again. No, Purdy's he's gonna get paid, but yeah, it's crazy. San Francisco that because 2-3 years ago I was expecting them to be in the Super Bowl. And now, they'll be hard pressed to make the playoffs.
They might be at the Super Bowl. Well, maybe I guess you call that in if they're buying tickets. I
Yeah.
guess they could be in the Super Bowl too. So,
And as you know, I am a Kyle Shanahan fan, so well.
oh man. Okay, Dave. I'm getting ready to give you both barrels here. You know it.
All right.
All right. So first of all, the pursuit of ayahuasca. Really? I mean, come on, like I said, they got Cooper Cup for less. I mean, Cooper Rush for less than what ayahuasca wants. I think we're overpaying him. No mobility. I say his arm is iffy at best. But I'll go on. We get DK Metcalf. But Amari Cooper is still out there. Stephon Diggs. Even Elijah Moore. All these guys are still available. And they're an upgrade on DK Metcalf because DK does exactly the same thing that Pickens does. We need something to break that up. Now, you have offensive guard Trevor Jenkins, and you have offensive tackle Cam Robinson. They're 27 and 28 respectively. Both could be useful pursuits for our leaking offensive line. So, why are we settling for these guys, these mediocre guys? With the exception of Slay, we're signing guys to 1-year contracts. We got young guys here that could be signed to 3 or 4-year contracts and be leaders. Well, I mean, in the case of these linemen, you could have 4 or 5 good years. If you only got 2, that would be fine. But we need to address our needs substantially, not with these 1-year, one and done guys. Talk to me, Dave.
All right. Well, there's a lot to unpack there. I guess I'll start with the quarterback situation. That's the big one. Really, what happened is in Kevin Colbert's last year's general manager, they swung and they missed on Kenny Pickett, and they were going to bring him back for a 3rd year. And then they signed Russell Wilson for with Denver carrying most of the freight for it. with the expectation of Kenny Pickett competing for the job. And Kenny Pickett apparently didn't want to compete for the job, and made it known that he was unhappy, and he got traded to the Eagles. So then we ended up with Justin Fields, again, another bargain for 2024. And so it's like, okay, we got Wilson, we got Fields. Well, one of these guys is going to emerge as a starter for 2025. Well,
Didn't happen.
didn't happen. And what's interesting is that the Steelers did make Fields an offer. He waited until the tamper period, which I predicted that was going to happen. It only made sense. And then he ended up getting a $40 million deal, a 2-year deal with the Jets, with $30 million of it guaranteed. So that's $20 million a year. It's not that much. And I don't know if the Steelers countered it, but they didn't really act aggressively to keep him. And he left. And what's really kind of strange is there's really been no news about any types of talks between the Steelers and Russell Wilson. There's just been like radio silence.
Yeah, like shipping off to the Browns is fine.
And all of a sudden, yeah, he's visiting Cleveland. He's visiting New York, and I never thought that this would happen. All of a sudden, they're talking about Aaron Rodgers, and what it leads me to believe is that, number one, is that there had been a report that there was friction between Rodgers and Arthur Smith. And I kind of dismissed it at the time.
You mean between Wilson? You mean Wilson?
Between Wilson and Smith. And I dismissed it at the time because Russell Wilson in public has always said the right things.
Right thing.
And has been very reinforcing and all this kind of stuff. But this kind of puts a little smoke under that fire that there is some dissension behind the scenes. Because otherwise, why aren't they trying to get Wilson signed? It's a mystery to me. And then the other thing is that when Sam Darnold became available, I don't think he was interested at all in coming to Pittsburgh. And I think part of it, I'm starting to wonder. I know that Reggie he does not like Arthur Smith. And I'm wondering if these quarterbacks don't like his offensive scheme, because it doesn't sound like quarterbacks are breaking down the wall. So, right now they're waiting to see what Aaron Rodgers says between the Giants and the Steelers. Cam Hayward said, on his podcast, basically said, hey, it's simple. If you want to be a Pittsburgh Steeler, speak up. Otherwise, go. But we've gotten silent. So I don't know what's going to happen there. The problem for Pittsburgh is that this year was a horrible year to need a quarterback because the free agency market was shallow for quarterbacks, and the draft class is not a very deep draft class. And I think that they're positioning themselves. So this leads us to, why are they making all these periphery moves, where they're building depth? I think that they're positioning themselves for the 2026 draft, which is in Pittsburgh, and that they're going to draft a quarterback definitely in 2026 that they're hoping will become their franchise quarterback.
So are we supposed to sit through mediocrity until they draft a quarterback?
Well, that's 2026. That's next year. And so for 2025, you've had Najee Harris leave. You've had Dante Jackson leave. You've had like a third of their starters from 2024 that have left. And by signing these by avoiding signing these high profile guys, I think that they're trying to build up compensatory draft picks for next year. This year they got 0. And I think that they're banking on 2026 in order to have 3 maybe even 4 compensatory draft picks that they can use in order to trade up if they need, in order to get the quarterback that they want. And then the other thing is the reason on the defensive line that they didn't really target any real studs in the free agencies. I believe that they're probably going to draft a defensive lineman, which it's a deep class this year, with their first pick. I'm thinking like Grant from Michigan, or Harmon if he's available from Oregon. Although Pittsburgh did not have a big presence at their pro day, but something like that. For the offensive line, again, they're riding on. They let Dan Moore go. He got an $80 million contract. Somebody paid him big money, and they're going to be relying on Broderick Jones to shift over to the left, and Troy Fautano to be healthy and be the right tackle. And they still may sign another tackle. They need some depth there for sure. So that's what they're doing. But I think that right now, one is Pittsburgh only has 6 draft picks in 2024 right now, because they traded away their second round draft pick in order to bring in DK. Now, speaking of DK, I don't think it's a big deal that he's a one-trick pony running deep routes, because if you have DK on the left side running deep and you have Pickens on the right side running deep, who are they going to double up on?
Who's in the middle?
And if they try doubling up on both of them, you got Freiermuth going down the seam. Now all of a sudden that opens up your game in the middle. So you got Freiermuth, you got Calvin Austin, you got Roman Wilson, you got these guys and that can take advantage of it. So what it does is, whether they got a route runner like a Deontay Johnson type, which I think is more along the lines of Amari Cooper or Stephon Diggs, well, it accomplishes the same thing. What it's doing is it's forcing the defenses to pick who are we going to double up on, and instead they just got two guys. And actually, I thought for Russell Wilson this would have been perfect. And Mason Rudolph throws a nice deep ball. And so if they're going to be opening it up that way, well, then defenses are going to have to decide, okay, how are we going to address that? And then that could leave things open down the seam or across the middle.
But you have to keep your quarterback upright, which means that you have to have an offensive line that's going to kind of help anyway. But
you compensate that by having a mobile quarter. That's why I thought Justin Fields was the answer. Is if you have a mobile quarterback, he can help compensate for less than stellar offensive pass rush.
Was it Moore that gave up 12 sacks last year?
Well, most of that was at the end of the season. I think it was 12. But then, the question also comes in. Russell Wilson didn't do himself any favors too. He started doing that almost like Kenny Pickett used to do. That little curl, right into the defender, which is a nightmare for the tackle. So. They never used the word rebuilding in Pittsburgh. They say that they're reloading or anything, but this is as close as you can come to rebuilding as you can. They don't even have a starting quarterback on their roster right now, and you got to go back pre Ben Roethlisberger, before this ever existed. Because even after, when they drafted Kenny Pickett, you knew, okay, we got our starting quarterback. When they signed Russell Wilson last year, you knew that you had your starting quarterback. now they don't have a quarterback other than Mason Rudolph, but clearly they're, for that money, for $4 million, $8 million over 2 years, they're signing him to be a backup. And so you probably have to go into the 20th century before you find a Steelers team that was this late into the or this far into the post or off season without a starting quarterback on their roster.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, but like I said, I ordered 12 paper bags. If eight, was it 17 paper bags? If we get Aaron Rodgers, I'll be the Steeler fan.
I want to see that on the.
It'll be right here. It'll be right here.
But what I understand is that Pittsburgh is only offering him a one-year deal.
Right.
So if the Giants offer him a 2-year deal, I don't know. It's going to be interesting what happens. This is just unprecedented for the Steelers. This is kind of unprecedented.
I think, isn't he asking for over 30 mil too?
Well, he had originally said he had talked about 2 years, 90 million. He had thrown out 45 million, very, very early. And it was just like a throwaway comment that he made. Now they're talking into the 30s, but we won't know until he signs, and then we'll find out the details of when he signs.
45 million. He was really smoking something that day. I don't know. It might have been something a little stronger than ayahuasca.
He ordered the deal.
But guys, I have one question that I didn't get to before we started, and I'm going to just throw this out there real quick, see what you guys think. It's reported that during a conversation on Tuesday morning, that 47 and Putin discussed a possible National Hockey League versus the Criminal Hockey League games. Now, we had these before the Ukraine attacked Russia, but it was suspended during this particular time. What do you guys think? Is this something that we should resume or what?
Well, I think if you look at the Trump, his personality. First of all, Trump is very into sports. He had the movie on the New Jersey Generals and the USFL. He's friends with Herschel Walker. He's friends with George Foreman. He's friends with Evander Holyfield. He's friends with Mike Tyson. He's friends with Tom Brady. I mean, he gets cheered everywhere he goes where sports being played. And I think he's going to use sports as a diplomatic tool because he knows that the Russians love hockey. And he knows America was going to kick Russia's ass in hockey. American hockey is a lot better now than it was actually when we won the Olympics back in 1980 when we upset the Russians. Now we beat the Russians. Back then it was like 1 in 100 times you beat the Russians. Now it's probably 60-40 in favor of the United States. So I think and I don't know. I don't even know if Putin likes hockey, but I know that Trump will use sports as a tool to wheel and deal. And I think it'd be fine. I would love to see us beat the Russians again. That's always fun. And then maybe he can take that and open the door to diplomacy and get this war ended in Ukraine. We'll see. What do
you think, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, to me, the big thing is they're talking.
Yes.
For the last 3 years, we kind of froze. Nobody was talking to Russia, and we told Russia today, you're not allowed to show your media in the United States, and if an American's working for them, they could be breaking the law. So we're undergoing this censorship, which a lot of people aren't even aware of. we're not allowed to watch every media outlet that's out there, and that's one of them. Now you got a guy that's actually talking to an adversary, and that's the way I would call it, and that's very important. And using sports as a bridge, this goes all the way back to Nixon. Whenever they opened up China, they had the ping pong
Yes. I was just thinking about that.
diplomacy.
Forrest Gump.
And people kind of like were scoffing at it, but what it did is it broke the ice. It was a big icebreaker whenever we did this big ping pong exchange with the Chinese. So really, it's not unprecedented. And hey, if that's something, I mean, the big thing is, can they get the war stopped between Ukraine and Russia? Get a ceasefire, get talks going. But then the other part of it now is, well, what's our relationship going to be with Russia? Because what we've been doing for years, we kicked the Russians out. The Russians did something. We kicked them out of the G9s. And, now we're down to like G7 or whatever it is, because we must have kicked somebody else out. They wanted to join NATO. We said no. They've just been pushed aside. They're a nuclear power. We need to be, just like with the Chinese, we need to be figuring out what our relationship is going to be. And if it's going to take sports to help break that ice, to establish some type of a relationship there, I think it's a good thing. It's a positive thing.
Okay. All right. Just wanted to see what your outcome would be, or what your outlook would be on that. Like I said,
I was surprised that it came up. I mean, because they had a 2-hour conversation. They were, talking about, Trump's trying to negotiate this peace, between Ukraine and Russia. But hey, I'm if it helps, great.
Yeah. Well, like I said, before the war, we did have, this was something that was actual played. We had teams going back and forth between the Soviet Union. I think we played a couple games in Estonia or some other states over there. And, of course, the war brought about an end to that. But
well, sorry to interrupt, but it changed the way we play hockey in the NHL today. Because what happened is when the Russians first came, they played like the Broad Street Bullies. They were playing the Flyers, and at that time, if you think that there's a lot of fighting now, there used to be a lot more fighting. As soon as you fell behind, you started fighting. You kind of compensated for your lack of skill with fisticuffs. And the Russians didn't fight. They passed and passed and passed. They played a different style of hockey. And so what happened is the NHL actually adopted a lot of the style of play that they had, and it helped transform the way, and it's made hockey better in the NHL, in Canada and the United States.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree, and international hockey also. So, guys, hey, as always, great program tonight. Hope you guys enjoyed the baseball segment. Sorry that Demetrius and them missed it, but I think we're going to go to you, Dave. Final thoughts for the evening.
Yeah. With the Steel, it was all this uncertainty with the quarterback situation with the Steelers. It's really thrown fans for a tizzy. And I've talked to a lot of them, and they are just like at their wits' end. And it's kind of like that. As fans, we really have no control over what the Steelers end up doing and what the players decide, because under free agency, the players have some say. But it's good to find a distraction. So tomorrow, the NCAA wrestling championships, NCAA Division I championships start. President Trump is supposed to stop in. It's going to be in Philadelphia over the next 3 days. And to me, wrestling is one of the most pure, one of the most toughest sports that there is, because it's just you and the other person on the mat. It's not like a lucky punch that does it. It takes a lot of skill. Guys like Gable Stevenson is back for Minnesota. He's an Olympic champion. He's coming back because he had one more year of eligibility. So it'll be cool to see him wrestle. Penn State has a great team, but then there's teams like Northern Iowa and Cornell. So you got practically like an Ivy League school and Northern Iowa, and they're very tops in wrestling. So it's a really fun tournament to watch. So I'm really looking forward to doing it. Penn State has a chance to match I think it was the 2001 Minnesota Gophers, who had 10 All-Americans. So the top 8 finishers are considered All-Americans. And since 1928, whenever they started the NCAA wrestling championships, only one team has had all 10 weight classes represented by an All-American, and that was Minnesota. And Penn State has a shot at doing it this year to kind of match what Minnesota did back about 24 years ago. So I'm really looking forward to it, and it's a good distraction that takes me away from worrying about what ayahuasca is going to decide to do.
Don, take us home, man. Where's
Okay,
Ranger tonight? Haven't heard Ranger. What's up, man?
Ranger's no longer with us.
Oh,
So
sorry to hear that, Don.
yeah, well, he was probably the best dog I ever had. But I'll see him again one day. I'll see him again.
Oh yeah.
How old was he?
He was 11, but he had some genetic, joint issues. His quality of life just wasn't good, and so I had to put him down. And I went to a Whataburger, which is, I don't know if I have Whataburger where you are, but it's a Texas. It's a burger place. I bought him a double meat with cheese, plain and dry, and fed it to him. Gave him his last meal, and then yeah. So anyway, my final.
Sorry to hear that, I know we missed his voice, so sorry.
Yeah, he was an official dog of the sports crib. Yeah, it's sad because I knew he was getting older, but he still had a lot of energy, and then just within like a month or so, he just started going downhill real fast, and so yeah, good dog. Final thoughts. Well, I just looked on my ESPN app, and Texas is up 10 points against Xavier, so one more win, and Terry keeps his job, and Texas fans will be pissed.
Hey guys, as always fun. Just here, talk a little sports, and whatever other differences we have, this is our common denominator. So, hey, I appreciate you guys, and I'll see everybody next week.
All right. Hey, take care. Really enjoyed Jack Moore. That was nice.
Yeah, you guys let me know. I'll bring him back whenever you want.
Yeah, but let's get the other crew singing. I know Demetrius is a big Detroit Tiger fan, so
yeah, maybe I'll see if I can get a wrestling guy in too. I don't know, There's always some guys running around the web. So, we can have some guests. Now that football season's over with, we can have a few more guests. So, I'll be working on that also, guys. So have a good weekend. See
See
everybody
you guys.
next.
Take care.